Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Peyton Marshall, CEO of LeveragePoint, who will be moderating today's panel. Peyton served in a number of product management, sales, and C-suite roles in the financial services, biopharmaceuticals, healthcare IT, and B2B sales and marketing software spaces. As CEO of LeveragePoint, he works with our clients to address their product management, marketing, and sales challenges. Peyton, take it away.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you all for joining us today. At LeveragePoint, we have the opportunity to work with world-class organizations who center their commercial strategy on customer value. Value strategies go beyond your product features to identify customer benefits, to understand the dollarized, euroized value your product or solution creates for your customer. Revenue increases, cost reductions, risk reductions. Great B2B enterprises look at their business through a customer value lens. Value strategies drive better commercial decision-making, helping to understand customer segments, to design offers that are better suited to customers, to set value-based prices, and to communicate the value your solution delivers to your customer. Once your organization understands customer value, value enters into customer conversations, improving sales execution. Value selling speeds up sales cycles, drives higher prices, higher margins, increases close rates, and supports successful product launch. Today's webinar is about the right-hand part of this slide. It's about value selling. And it's important to realize that there are different users and different use cases within value selling. There are account executives, sales reps, and inside salespeople working early in the sales cycle and maybe late as well with new accounts or in upselling additional products and services to existing accounts. There are pre-sales professionals, including solution consultants, sales engineers, subject matter experts, working on those same opportunities in the middle of the sales cycle. And post-sale and existing account management, where customer success, retention, and relationship review are often a central theme. Value plays a role for all of these. With that as background, what are some good ways to get started in value selling? We're delighted to be joined virtually today by 3 LeveragePoint clients. From France, Laurent Gambier, Pricing Director at Schneider Electric. From Austria, Paolo De Angeli, Pricing Group Expert at Borealis. From New Jersey, Marian D. Simone, Business Value Expert at Dun & Bradstreet. And also joining our panel from Massachusetts is Tanique Lenderman, LeveragePoint's Director of Customer Success and Value Selling Advisor. Welcome, everyone. As a format, we thought we would take about 10 minutes with each panelist, inviting them to share some of their experiences. Then we'll open it up to audience questions. So let's start with Laurent Gambier at Schneider Electric. Laurent is no stranger to LeveragePoint webinars, having presented on several occasions in the past. Laurent and Schneider are prominent proponents of customer value strategies and are a long-standing LeveragePoint customer where their primary use of LeveragePoint has been as a tool for pricing and decision-making. Laurent, thanks for joining us. As background, let's ask you just a few questions about how you and Schneider have used value as part of your new product launch process over the last 5 or 6 years. Where do you use value? Which products? Who's been responsible for value in new product launch? Laurent?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Very pleased to be part of this panel. So in a nutshell, Schneider Electric, for those of you who don't know, is the leader in energy management and industrial automation. So to your question, Peyton, I would say value is used across the entire offer creation and management process, right? So there is no limits. It can potentially have to do with any product theoretically. And especially talking about products, but also talking about what surrounds the products as such, like, for instance, our brand image that could be differentiated, our logistics performance that could be also differentiated. Not also to mention that we are going more and more towards from a product, I would say, world to more and more connected, integrated digital offers or solutions that are bringing new challenges, but also new opportunities for applying value-based pricing. So I would say, generally speaking, the consensus is that the value approach from a pricing perspective to us makes most sense whenever our offer is meaningfully differentiated or meaningfully innovative, right? So economic value estimation, or EV, in particular, as you know, require that differentiation. Otherwise, it is a fairly pointless approach to have. So who is responsible for value in our organization? I would say it's pretty much everybody, right? It's really a shared responsibility, starting with innovation, of course, when we want to ensure that we come up with innovation that makes sense for our customers, that address the needs, their concerns. That it continues with what we usually call value marketing, making sure that we are able to clearly articulate the value with respect to our targeted segments. It continues with value-based pricing, where we want to monetize that value. And of course, and last but not the least, it ends with value selling, because it's critical that our sales force is able to clearly articulate that value to our customers, so that they really understand the benefits of a differentiation and be willing to pay consistently with that additional value delivered.
That's great. So Laurent, last year you drove an initiative to elevate the communication side, the value communication in the organization, and had a value proposition contest. Why don't you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year, indeed, we ran a value-based pricing contest, strongly supported by the Leverage Point team, Ed Arnold, former product VP for Leverage Point, and Andrew Takahashi for customer success. So this contest gathered 5 teams, so 5 offers, 1 offer per team, covering all Schneider's Electric business units. We wanted to be representative of our entire business. And it was sponsored by a senior VP for brand and marketing engagement, as well as by our pricing VP for the group.
Interesting. So who were the judges on the panel?
Well, the judges were made up of several people, including, of course, our Leverage Point coaches. Our global pricing people, including our pricing VP, our strategic pricing director, and myself as a value-based pricing program leader. It also included our business unit pricing leaders, our marketing excellence director, and our director for our launches playbook, as well as our director for offer creation and innovation governance. So quite a lot of people involved.
So the contest itself must have been sort of like the World Cup for value. Tell us a little bit. How did you set up the presentation panel? Did contestants watch other contestants present?
Yeah, so we allocated quite some time in selecting actually the offer that would make up that contest. First of all, by ensuring that those offers were really acknowledged as being differentiative or innovative. Offers also that whose launch was supposed to occur within a reasonable horizon, right? You don't want to, run a contest on something that would be launched not before 7 years from now. So 6 months to 1 year from the launch was the offer, the criteria that we kind of considered. Also offers whose prices hadn't been communicated yet to the market, right? And also offers for which the teams in charge were quite motivated and would definitely commit on running this contest from the start to the end.
Okay, so 5 teams in the final bracket. Tell us about the winner or winners. What made their value propositions better?
Yeah, well, actually, we had two co-winners, right? Two teams coincidentally co-won, and we assessed the quality of the winners considering different criteria. So first of all was the quality of the economic value modeling. We also considered the quality of the pricing strategy. Was it really supported by a clear pricing strategy? We also looked at the way value was communicated and the way it was articulated, especially related to different personas. We also considered how assessed or not the different value propositions had been tested in the field with some sales force, with eventually some customers. And of course, we also considered the quality of the presentation on the occasion of the contest presentation by the teams, and also the quality of the lessons learned.
Interesting. So it was extra work for the participants. What did they say about the benefits of participating in the contest?
Yeah, so I'd say, well, additional work, yes and no, in the sense that what we did actually directly served, right, the domain of responsibility. But yes, indeed, it was extra work because it was a new approach for each member of the team. So what they enjoyed the most was really the very personalized coaching approach. On the occasion of the periodic, what we call check-in sessions, run by the Leverage Point team that would really coach each team during a 1 hour session, making sure that they would be taken step by step throughout the process of value modeling, communication, and pricing, and also a nice guidance from the Leverage Point team on the preparation in anticipation of the next coaching session. So there was really some homework to be done by each of the teams before joining the next session.
Okay, great.
They were also, I think the teams were also very impressed by the process of really walking the value talk, of really deep diving into our differentiation and in the articulation of that differentiation in words that really customers could understand, that was really tied up to their needs, to their problems.
So what about afterwards? What did you hear from participants, and did they use their value propositions after the contest? What feedback did you get?
Yeah, absolutely. So the result of this contest turned into very tangible executions. In particular, for one offer, for which the outcome of the exercise was used to sharpen the articulation of our value proposition, and also to sharpen the price level of that offer on the occasion of a major multiple-year deal signed in the US. So it was clearly extra economic profitability that was captured as a direct result of the exercise, as well as a real influence on our customers, I would say, specifications, as well on the capacity for our sales force to feel more confident in articulating our differentiation in front of customers. So multiple benefits enjoyed by the teams. And of course, this is just one case. We have also other examples from that contest where this exercise directly resulted into concrete execution to customers.
Great, thanks. Well, we'll come back to you in a minute, Laurent. Next, we welcome Paolo De Angeli from Borealis.
Hello, everyone.
Paolo has been working in pricing for 10 plus years and is an experienced practitioner when it comes to customer value management. He's now working with Borealis, where Leverage Point was primarily introduced to support value selling a little over a year ago. Paolo, we're glad to have you here. What was your starting point when you began using Leverage Point?
So first of all, hello, everyone. I'm also very pleased to be part of this panel, and thanks for the invitation, Peyton. So when we started a little bit more than 1 year ago, there were some areas in the organization that were, let's say, a little bit ahead of others in terms of value mindset and approach to value quantification. But nevertheless, those that were using already some tools, some methodologies were mainly supported by Excel spreadsheets. This was what we found when we started with Leverage Point.
Interesting. So I think you started with 2 or 3 market areas originally. Where are you now?
Yes, indeed. We started with 3 pilots. They were mainly in one of what we call industry classes, one of our business areas. And now, after 1 year, we are addressing 10 market areas across all these industry clusters and across geographies. And on top of that, we're trying to use this methodology as much as possible. So we created a brand new practice, if you wish. So I'm now supporting as many colleagues as possible that are interested in value-based pricing and quantification to capture opportunities, apart from the formal pilot program we launched. And it's interesting because you see that the more we grow, the more people are interested in understanding how this works. And we are not only quantifying the tangible elements of value, but also the intangible elements of value, which are the most difficult one, but also the most interesting somehow. And so it's growing.
Interesting. And as you organize and move it forward. So how do you use Leverage Point in your customer value management process?
So first of all, with customer value management process, we refer to customer value creation, the quantification of value, communication of value, and capturing. This is internally what we use in terms of methodology. And Leverage Point is mainly used at the moment with for the quantification piece and the communication piece to our customers. And of course, more and more also for the capturing part, while not so much still for the value creation.
What, as you look at your first pilots, what were your key learnings from those?
Well, there were many learnings, believe it or not. 1 year seems not so long period, but we learned a lot. Learnings go from how to approach a customer. For example, we learned that if we approach the dialogue with the customer to prove that we are better than the next best alternative and we want immediately to increase our prices, of course, it's not going to fly. While on the other hand, if we approach the customer being humble with initial proposal and initial assumptions to be validated with the customer itself, then chances of success are much higher. So also linked to this, we learned that we don't need necessarily to have a full data availability, full clarity of all the different elements of value quantification. It's enough to have a good, well-built assumptions to validate together with the customer. And this also is related to another key learning that we observed. It's about creating the right confidence with the sales managers. At the beginning, the first sales managers we approached were a little skeptical that customers will have release information and will have talked with us. But then when they realized that if approached properly, so as I said, with talking about value and talking about their issues and how our solutions can help them, customers opened up and were willing to share some information. And my colleagues, the sales managers, started step by step increasing their confidence in this experience, and they start following me much more.
Yeah, did you capture what some of the feedback from the salespeople were as they used it?
Yes, indeed. As I said, the first feedback were very positive about this. Once they saw that their customers were also reacting well to our approach, because as a matter of fact, when we started in the first areas. Together with Leverage Point, we built the first model. We went to the first customers, presenting, as I said, this methodology to help them quantifying what we are doing for them. And customers were happy. They liked it because they liked the fact that we were investing time in understanding better their issues. They liked the fact that we were trying to help them, and they open up. They were generally more interested in talking with us about this. So the first successes came along. The first value champions became ambassadors, if you wish. And they start sharing their experiences and training their colleagues. So it was, and it still is, of course, a very good journey so far.
Great, great. So now let's talk about your overall process to drive value selling. Anything else you want to add in terms of what you did to get initial sales use?
Well, so first of all, we started, as I said, in one of the areas that were a little bit ahead in terms of value mindset. And this for sure helped us because the business manager back then was very active in involving one sales manager and one technical rep that share our approach, and they needed to be, let's say, less convinced than the average. And this, of course, speed things up in starting. And on top of what I said before, another interesting, I think, aspect that we consider was to involve finance since the very beginning, pretty early in the process, because, of course, we don't want only to prove that this methodology is good for our customers, but we want to prove that it's delivering financial results, profits for us. And we were able to capture already some money after less than 6 months. But I wanted this to be, let's say, formalized by somebody external from the project. And this also enhance credibility in the eyes of sales managers, again, because they saw that not only this type of approach was helping them having a better conversation with their customers, but eventually they were more supported than in the past in either increasing volumes or increasing prices, or also keeping the same positioning. I'm sure that you agree that any avoided discounts is like a price increase. So also when under competitive threat, if with these methodologies you can protect your current positioning without losing your current price levels, then it's a success as well. So sales managers were encouraged by this.
Great. So let's look at your organization. So who creates and maintains the value proposition content for sales?
So at the moment, the responsibility lies with the business managers or marketing, but we created since day one a customer value team, if you wish, which is made out of me, the marketing representative, sales manager, and the technical rep. So these 4 people act as a team, of course. So the marketing manager creates the model, he reviews or she reviews it with me, and then we have a dry run session with the technical and sales to get challenged to find possible issues or possible elements we may have forgotten in building this model before presenting it to the customer. So it's a really joint effort.
Yeah. So as you look at things, when in the sales cycle does it make sense for your salespeople to have value conversations? And how often do they talk about prices in those conversations?
That's a very good, interesting question, Peyton, because it's another another of our learnings. So I would recommend to have this type of conversation far away from the negotiation period, because that's typically where customers are naturally more interested in talking about value, and they are, let's say, more open to enter in a partnership discussion. And in these conversations, I would recommend not to talk about prices at all, because these conversations, as I said, are around the customer's issues, what Borealis in this case is helping them solve these issues and in quantifying these different elements of value, because it's very important that the customers realize that if in the future, for whatever reason, we decide to invest less on one of the elements of value for whatever reason, it's important that we both understand, Borealis and the customer, what is at stake, right? And typically customers are happy to discuss about this as long as we are not, of course, in a negotiation. Otherwise, it's too complicated, and the two, let's say, objectives, on one hand to talk about value, and on the other hand to negotiate better prices and volumes, get mixed up, and the final result is not as good as doing things separately.
You know, that's really in stark contrast to so many people we hear who say, well, I'm saving value for the negotiation. That's really interesting. It's really the theme of use value early, I think. So now let's look going forward, as you look to increase sales adoption, you know, what are you doing? How are you tracking and measuring success?
Well, as I said, I'm building, as we speak, this model with my colleagues in finance and controlling team, and we are trying to understand how to measure the impact of this initiative, mainly comparing the performance of the customers in focus versus the baseline, meaning the same customers if they hadn't been approached with the methodology. So we look at the previous year's performance, and we're also considering looking at their peers. So by product type, let's say, and region, what happened to the customers in focus, so the customers that we visited with this methodology, if compared to the customers we did not visit with the leverage point and with the customer value management methodology. And we're trying to understand, as we speak, it's new for us because we started, as we said, a little bit more than 1 year. So it's new for us to track the results. But this is what we're trying to do at the moment. Yep.
Great. Well, thanks. We'll come back to you in a minute. So with that, so now let's turn to Marian. Marian DeSimone has extensive experience in enterprise value. She's educated global sales teams in over 20 countries on how to communicate the business value of their solutions. She's helped companies transform their sales methodologies to one that is business value centric, leading sales teams in delivering best-class technology solutions, and consulting on business value with some of the most widely recognized business enterprises. Most recently, she's been at the forefront of driving the initiative for value selling at Dun & Bradstreet. And to give Marian full credit, some of her team's learnings and some of their creative ideas about value content have contributed significantly to LeveragePoint's sales capabilities and some of our best practices. So Marian, welcome. Thanks for a terrific partnership.
Pleasure's all mine.
Okay. So let's start with how you design a good value proposition for broader sales use. Tell us a little bit more about how you develop value proposition content.
It's really about creating a line of sight between the customer's critical success factors, CSFs, and your product or solution capabilities. I define the customer's critical success factors as those things that, at the end of the day, your exec or business owner, they have to do these things in order to keep their job, or on a more positive note, be successful in order to get promoted. People's products, companies' products and solutions don't necessarily solve for 100% of the critical success factors, but they really need to be able to impact them, or you're bringing no value. You know, I say that value is always measured by the buyer. And you can use a persona-based early, like initial value propositions, since you may not be able to know the specific critical success factors. But when you get into the custom value propositions, you can tailor it more to their needs. And on the capability side, I don't mean features, I mean business functionality. You know, what does your solution bring? the ability to improve or accelerate or economize a customer's processes or decisions. So an example would be Dun & Bradstreet's fraud risk score. We use, financial institutions use it to uncover if they're doing business with bad guys. In the initial value proposition, we don't talk about our great algorithms, but we speak to, how does the score contribute to reducing write-offs or reducing human resource costs? So we connect that capability of the score to what's the top of mind issue or critical success factor for the financial sector business owner.
Great, great. So how have you set priorities for developing value content?
Well, at Dun & Bradstreet, we have a really large portfolio of enterprise solutions. So what we do as we're building content is we prioritized by where's the highest growth potential market and craft the message for those particular areas.
Okay, and as you develop the content, then who do you involve in the quantification side and in design?
So on the design messaging side, we have two key players. The graphic design folks make sure our story stays on brand. And because we do a lot of exporting from Leverage Point, we download the messaging slides and we harmonize them with a sales deck. We have to make sure that integration looks seamless and it really blends well with existing sales materials. Messaging, our product marketers guide us with the most current messaging about a product. And what we love about Leverage Point is it has tremendous flexibility to update when corporate messaging changes. Maybe there's new terminology we want to integrate, and that's easy to do on the platform. On the quantification side, we look at our customer success teams because they're dealing with customers in a post-sale environment, and they give us, where our capabilities have in fact had the greatest impact. When we lack those insights, when we're hypothesizing, we use third-party evidence as supporting material.
So once you have good content assembled, how do you test sales usability of that content before you broaden out its introduction?
Yeah, in testing, we turn to our solution product teams for the 10,000-foot reaction. They really look at that and say, yes, we have those capabilities. They still, we've worked with them along the process, so it isn't a surprise, like here it is all built out, but they still catch things that need to be tweaked. Sellers are the real test. We'll typically use a high readiness group of sellers to weigh in, and they're assessing to whether the value story aligns to how they typically position the solution with the customer. Does it make sense? We're not asking them to rejigger how they sell to the customer. It should blend in and merge with their typical process.
What have you learned about making content most useful?
Less is more. The simpler, the more straightforward the content, the faster the sellers will adopt it. And also consistency of design is also important. You can't ask them to relearn, a value proposition if it is, substantively different from the previous one. There should be some type of approach that makes it easy for them to adopt. And adoption is king when it comes to using a tool with customers and driving results. And I think a couple of our other panelists referred to that we need to have it built in such a way that it doesn't require a large lift on the side of the sellers.
Yeah, so when you're ready to make content available to the sellers, I think you've developed a strategic approach to get the biggest impact.
Well, when I hear the word impact, in my mind, I say generate revenue, right? At the end of the day, that's as a company what we're trying to do. And our strategy really is about three things to generate revenue. Provide a story that integrates with how the sellers approach the customer today, but includes simple metrics that the salespeople are comfortable using as a platform discussion, which sort of brings me back to the less is more. We had a couple of value propositions early on as part of our learning that we thought very detailed and granular, and that must be good. And what happened was sellers were intimidated by that level of modeling for value. And by elevating it to a more simple, clear level, the adoption actually went up. And then we also need to make sure that sellers have the necessary skills to work with their customers in having a value conversation. A value conversation is not one way. It's not us speaking to the customer about value. It's us speaking with the customer. So driving thought leadership and showing genuine curiosity about the customer, but making sure that we pull them in and we have debate. We argue over with the customer what kind of impact they think they'll see or why a certain value hypothesis will work for them or won't work for them. So it's a give and take.
So speaking of the salespeople you work with, I think you've been deliberate in identifying mobilizers. Tell me more how you've done that.
Well, the mobilizers have been individuals who showed, a tendency towards the highest readiness and / enthusiasm. And in learning a new tool and a new platform, enthusiasm is important and the willingness to give it a go. Before we even roll out a new value prop, we meet with sales leadership and we get them excited about the story. When you have a platform like Leverage Point that marries the mathematics, the metrics with powerful, strong visual messaging, it's hard not for them to get excited. They're usually like, how fast can you bring this to our people?
So then as you roll this out, how do you introduce new value propositions to a broader group? What kind of training, other onboarding sessions do you set up?
Well, I'm big on themes. So we had two of our biggest value story releases included, one was a Star Wars Jedi theme, and the other was a Harry Potter Wizards theme. So for the Star Wars, it was what's a Jedi without a lightsaber, or Harry Potter, what's a wizard without a wand? And Leverage Point, of course, was our lightsaber or our wand. And we built all of the sales enablement with, weaving in that theme. And it was a great deal of fun, and it kept people really, really engaged, because even, with a tool as exciting as Leverage Point, it can get dry. So we try to keep people really engaged.
Going a little deeper, training on content, training on tool, training with role play. How do you follow up?
The optimal training is done face-to-face, but, certain times it's just not possible. So we use a VILT, a virtual instructor-led platform. And when I use that modality, we try and make sure that the material that can be learned easily offline, platform logistics, background knowledge, that's done offline. And then we save the online time for richest exchange of knowledge, Q&A, role plays, that sort of thing.
And how do you follow up?
As I think it was Paolo who talked about competition and that sort of thing. Sellers and leaders love competition. That's why they sell. So an example would be with our Jedi training, the weekly communications on progress reports rank the teams with fighter jets that they could accumulate. And it was, people participating, having good, getting out into the market and experimenting and bringing that knowledge back, doing pre-work. And that worked amazingly well to keep our teams engaged as they went through their readiness training.
No, really keeping them motivated is important. So then when you, after the kind of the burst of training, then what do you do to work with individual reps? Do you coach? What do you usually try to do?
Well, we host office hours. It's really a drop-in environment where I'm typically on an open bridge, and people can call in and say, I'm working with a customer, I have this question. Sometimes it's one-on-one. I always made sure that our sellers could reach out at any time for either a technical question, which we might refer to you, or, a sales question. What's my next best step? And again, talking about that whole thing about when do you bring value in, we really work with our teams to say, don't wait until negotiation. That's way too late, and it's not a good position to be in to try and use value at that stage. Start early, and we're here to help and coach you. And we always have eagles, middle of the packards, and then like your laggards. So in coaching, I try and figure out what's broken with someone and try and remediate the special issues. Are they having trouble with messaging? Are they having trouble because their customer pushes back and they don't know how to respond to it? And capturing the success stories and sharing it with maybe others who are not quite as advanced.
And so tell us about that success. How do you track it? How do you communicate it?
Yeah, success in our world is revenue. So we look at close rates on opportunities that include value-based selling. We close it as high as 60% on opportunities that are brought in at the right stage, that value is brought in and a value proposition is brought in. And then we broadcast that success through sales communications. In Salesforce, we actually tag opportunities that have been involved in value selling so that we can measure the exact revenue impact.
Great. So final question for you. What are the 2 or 3 pieces of advice you would have for anyone getting started on a value selling initiative?
4 things. Well, maybe 5 things. Gain internal executive sponsorship at your C-level. Make sure that value is seen as a priority so that you can engage the resources you need to actually be successful. If you try and just do it from the ground up without that executive sponsorship, it's a tough row to hoe. Do a gap analysis on the skills necessary for value selling so that you can use your training organization or your sales enablement to make sure they have the capabilities, the sellers have the capabilities to actually execute. Align your value selling to your current sales methodology. Hopefully you have one and you can say at this stage, this is the value work that should be done, here in the discovery or even the quantification and qualification of the customer. Define the value roles. Value selling is a team sport. You heard it from our other panelists. There's product people, there's marketing people. You need to pre-sales and post-sales. Everyone should have a role and be pretty clear on what their role is. And lastly, hang around to measure the results of when you sell. Measure the results, the impacts that the customer gets, the business value, so that you can then infuse that insight back into future value propositions or even cite it anecdotally as supporting evidence. It creates great confidence when you can speak from a position of, we actually saw this value materialize.
Thanks, Marian. Back to you in a minute.
Okay.
Last and certainly not least, we welcome Tanique Lenderman. Tanique has a background in both sales and sales training, including some great experience in both at Oracle. Tanique recently joined us at Leverage Point as our Director of Customer Success and Value Selling Advisory. Tanique, you just came back from Gainsight's big conference, Pulse. Maybe you could start with how value selling can play a role in customer success.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Peyton. I'm excited to be here with everybody. So hello. As a customer success professional, you should constantly be reminding your customers about their intention and the goals they wanted to achieve when they paid for your product, right? Focusing on the outcome and the impact. This was an overarching message that we heard. Prices can always cast a hazy shadow over the benefit of your product when charged with cutting costs, maybe justifying every payment. People sometimes forget what their intentions were initially and why your product can help them achieve their goals. So quantifying your product's value is the most obvious way to demonstrate the actual return on investments to your customers. By defining the time and resources you've invested on your end, requiring customers to play an active role, you can increase the product's value. Customers will come to view your company as a trusted business partner. I think everybody that we talk to, we don't want to be viewed as like a vendor. We want to be a strategic, trusted business partner. And in onboarding, a really important place to do this is agreeing on those quantifiable KPIs, setting specific milestones, and checking in regularly. to make sure you're on track. Sometimes customers have very different expectations, and we really have to make sure that we're on the same page.
Great. Let's shift gears a little bit and maybe get you to talk a little bit more about the transition from traditional selling to value selling. How do you think about the phases, the endpoints?
Right. So interesting. I think any change from when you're changing a sales methodology or there's an initiative, I think that it's always going to come with some angst, right? So it's really important, and I think I'll echo some of what Marian had mentioned earlier, but aligning on the business outcomes, right? So we need to know what we're trying to achieve organizationally, and identify and involve those cross-department stakeholders that are involved in this, right? We can't just, it's not just a turn of the key. Getting in sync up front really reduces the risk of getting critical feedback too late in the process and creating rework. Knowing your users is so important. End users come in many forms, right? And on your sales team, it can be sales leaderships, executives, maybe pre-sales. Knowing what each group wants to see and how they want to see it makes a big difference in adoption, utilization, and that change of behavior that we're looking for. Reps may need some tools to help them facilitate some of this, but executives might not need it, so they'll want a fast and easy way to get to the sales results.
So speaking of sales people, let's talk about specific types a minute. Let's talk about the salesperson who knows it all and can't be bothered. As a sales trainer, how do you motivate those kinds of salespeople?
You just brought up my favorite thing in the whole world. If there is any sales trainers out there, they'll appreciate some of this, right? Let's start by getting their leaders involved. You always sometimes know when you walk into a room and you fulfill that, you always know, and sometimes you don't get their leaders. But if you can get their leaders involved to make sure they understand the importance of it. You'll hear me talk a lot about leadership enablement first, so that we have that support and they can drive the behavior on their team. And setting expectations for them, and list these seasoned sales reps. So if you know you're going to have some of these experienced know-it-alls that are resistant to training, make sure that if you're doing the training or facilitating, enlist those reps to help train others. That was always my favorite. I use them. They helped with role plays. They helped in the classroom. They love to share their experiences and expertise. This helps them get them involved, and they really feel like they become part of it. It's amazing how you see the shift when you enlist them as help. And treat them like a star athlete, elevating participation and involvement by treating these seasoned sales reps like star athletes. Think about it like this way. These star athletes, they're still often the first to practice and are among the hardest workers, right? So if you're able to get this philosophy across to your reluctant reps, they'll come to understand that even the best performers can still improve.
Great. Maybe one final question for you, Tanique. As a sales trainer, who else do you rely on outside the sales organization?
Oh boy. So we rely on everybody. No. When we're thinking about sales training and sales enablement, this is a really collaborative role. We really need to be collaborating across the organization with our operations team, our marketing team, finance, and our product teams are the ones that, and maybe it's a sales enablement team, maybe it's customer success. This is an opportunity to collaborate and build those relationships across company.
Great, thanks. Well, I think we could keep going individually with each of you. Let's open it up and get a little more discussion across the broader group. And let's just start with the challenges of getting to good value content. Laurent, you've been quantifying value for a few years. And as you do this, as you work with teams, I'm sure you face a number of challenges and actually quantifying value. What do you do to address those?
Yeah, so biggest challenges there are quite a few, obviously. So to create a good value content, of course, it starts with a good understanding of our customers' operations, of their needs, and of as well of the good understanding of our competitive environment. If I pick the example of our new digital services offers, competition is not so easy to really get a clear understanding of, right? Many startup companies, for instance, not to mention that competitive price intelligence also is a challenge, right? Because you just have no clue what those new digital services are priced at. So and those are definitely precious inputs to creating value models. And of course, once you know that, it's making sure that you create offers that, again, bring meaningful differentiation to customers, right? So it's not so easy to be meaningfully innovative. So I would say that's a challenge. How do we address that? We want to make sure that, of course, our voices of customers are very robustly designed, that we can really grasp the essence of our customers' need through those voices of customers, and that we, of course, interpret them correctly. And also that we go through some sort of structured acknowledgement of our differentiation. So for doing that, usually we use a tool by the name of MOCA, that stands for Matrix of Competitive Advantages, that combines multiple stakeholders from marketing, sales, business development, etc., to really acknowledge that indeed this offer is differentiated, and for that offer indeed value-based pricing makes sense, because there is some tendency to want to apply dogmatically value-based pricing to any kind of offer, and that's sometimes a mistake. So definitely the structured assessment of the differentiation level is something that helps address first of all the confirmation that value-based pricing applies, and then it definitely helps with building up the value models again out of that differentiation assessment.
Yeah, interesting. Others want to comment on getting to value content. Paolo, anything on that?
Well, maybe we can connect again to what we said before. One of the biggest challenges I encountered in this exercise was to proceed without having all the information, right? So this was one of the biggest pushback I received at the beginning. How can I go to a customer if I don't know this particular number in their production process? And what we learned is that we don't need that number. We need a strong thought process to explain to the customer that we really try to get to a realistic number, which is fair to start with a conversation, but then it's through the conversation that together we validate this number, and then together we get to an agreed value quantification, right? So this would be my recommendation in this case. Yeah.
And by the way, as we started these general questions, I should have encouraged people. We've got some great questions, but please enter your questions in the panel on your screen. So Marian talked about the design of value propositions and design as good value presentations. And let's sort of start there. Tanique, when you think about designing presentations for engagement, what do you think about?
I think it should have nothing to do with me and everything to do with who I'm making it for. It's funny if you hear yourself saying I, me, us, or your company name, you've got to shift and think about it from a customer perspective. Because I always think about this question. So, let's say we can improve your operational processes or cost by 10%. So my next question is, so what? We should be able to answer that, so what? In order to do that, we have to know about the customer. What are their challenges? So I want to know what problems they're faced with before going into anything else. I can have a hypothesis at times, right? because we know the persona, right? And we have a general idea of what their typical challenges are in that role. So I'm going to build a hypothesis around that, and it's going to be around them and those particular challenges.
Yeah. So, Marian, you strongly emphasized simple is best. Anything to add to that?
Well, you'll know when you show it to, a good high readiness seller the first time, and they just can't grasp that you're in trouble. So it should be an immediate, like, this makes sense. I can talk to this. I understand. As soon as you have to spend, more than 5 minutes explaining how you evolved that hypothesis, you need to revisit it.
Yeah. No, and sometimes, have you started with some of yours really trying to get a salesperson to tell their story the way they would?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to this. I think Paolo emphasized this question of exact customer data and not necessarily needing it. I wonder what others have found in terms of the need to get the data right. Denise?
So in order to get the data right, we're talking about...
So you really need to get the data right.
So no, that goes back to my answer on the hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
So in those initial conversations, you're going to do your homework, right? I think a lot of the time it's really important that we do our homework and we understand the customer, because you can't talk about value if you don't know what's important to them.
Yeah.
So you should be able to make a hypothesis.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great opportunity to say, this is a hypothesis. I'm not sure if this is exactly where you're at, but let's go ahead and put your numbers in here and your data and your metrics in here.
Yeah. Marian, you come from a data company. What do you say when salespeople say they need to get the data right?
Yeah, we actually face that as a challenge because they were so used to being able to really analyze the customer's data and then have all this rich information, and the thought of going into something and not having it completely locked down. And that was a mindset shift for our sellers to be able to understand the value and the richness of debate with your customer. Like in those conversations where they're saying, I don't think it's going to be that, I think it's going to be this, or a lot is disclosed by the customer that they would never give you as far as insights. And it comes to a point where you want that number that eventually gets landed on to be mutually agreed to, not one party bearing down on the other and forcing it. So I always say the secret sauce is in the actual dialogue between the customer around the metrics.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Please enter questions and we'll try and follow up with them afterwards. Nick?
Yeah, and really quickly before we go, we're really excited to announce next month's Leverage Point webinar. It's going to be on Tuesday, July 30th, and we're going to be welcoming back Todd Snellgrove, who will be talking all about quantifying and selling value for services. And we're really excited about this one. So in the post-webinar survey, you'll have the chance to give your feedback, ask any more questions, and also pre-register for this webinar. And we'd just like to thank everyone for joining us for today's event. I give a special thank you to our wonderful panel, and everybody have a great rest of the week. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.